Welcome, everybody. My name's Andrea Brozyna, and I'm here with my colleague, Erin Piercey. You might know us from some of the other delicious demos if you've dropped by, or from the help sessions that we offer on Brightspace and Zoom and Google Docs and things like that at lunch. So welcome. Thanks for coming out today. Today's topic is Google Assignments. In the chat, can you just let me know how many of you have used Google Classroom and found the ability to use assignments in Google Classroom was one of the things you kind of liked about Google Classroom? Anybody familiar with that already from some previous teaching experiences? Yeah. So I have used Google Classroom the last 4 years. I was at my bricks and mortar school. That's what I was using and trying to run a paperless classroom. And I loved it, loved it, loved it. I like Brightspace, and I've been using Brightspace as an e-learning teacher for more than 15 years. So now we've got this interesting marriage, this kind of Reese peanut butter cup of, if we think of Brightspace as the chocolate, it's kind of that nice little cup, that kind of envelope. And Google, to extend our metaphor, is the peanut butter, is the stuff that goes inside. Now, does it work together perfectly? Well, it's getting there. Let's take a look at it together. So why use Google Assignments in Brightspace? And it's just something I think it was available to us in TDSB starting in September, October. It gives you that functionality of the Google Classroom workflow while staying inside of Brightspace. So instead of having to run two classrooms going out to a separate Google Classroom, you bring the Google Assignment feature into Brightspace. So, and our students are very familiar with Google Docs, and there's many use cases where it's really helpful for us as teachers to be able to see a student's progress. So they get a personalized copy of the assigned Google Doc, just like in Classroom. And as they work on it, even before they submit it, we can go in and we can provide feedback, provide support. They can update the work. So instead of submitting assignments and, our teacher assessment is like an autopsy after it's all said and done, that sounds kind of grim, but much better to use some kind of preventative medicine and work with the student and learn as they're moving along. So how do we get this beautiful marriage of chocolate and peanut butter? There are two places, and if you look up videos on how to use this on the internet, almost all of them, interestingly enough, situate Google Assignments in content, but they can live in assignments as well. And in the little note sheet that you're welcome to make a copy of or take some notes on yourself or share with friends, it shows you, we're going to start and we're going to demo today, starting with Google Assignment. It just, to me, just logically, it seemed like the place to go, but there are reasons to use, to surface your Google Assignment in content as well. And it's really based on how you want to use it. So I'm going to just pop my notes over here out of the way, and Erin's looking after the chat for us, and will just interrupt me if there's something I need to address or if I'm not making sense or going too fast. So I'm just going to start out over here in assignments. And when you create a new assignment, what I want to reproduce here is a Google Doc that I'm using with my class. And just to keep things neat and tidy, I'm just going to copy the same title, find it's less confusing. And over here in my Google Doc, I put a link to my Brightspace lesson. It's just the unique URL page of the content for the lesson, just so this isn't kind of sitting off in isolation on its own and kids can link it up together well. So I'm just going to copy my instructions, because you can never have instructions in too many places. Now, all Google Assignments force us to give it a numeric score. You can't give it a 0. The minimum you can give it is a 1. This particular one, I'm going to give 10. And it is going to generate a grade item as well. So that's where I'm going to leave my kind of chocolate surrounding here. And now to go down to the peanut butter to get to the Google, I'm going to use this funky little icon, which I had actually never noticed before. I was always going right to my drive and attaching documents. But this one with the little lightning bolt and the chain is a link to an existing activity. Now, this activity doesn't exist in Brightspace yet, but it exists in out in Google. So this is where we're going to head, and we have to scroll down. They don't make the good stuff easy to find. It's down here beneath the fold if we were reading a newspaper. Go to Google Assignments. Sorry, I clicked that really quickly. The title was Google Assignments. Make sure it's me, because I could be, it reads other, if I've been using Google previously and I was using a personal account, you might need to switch. So make sure you're in your TDSB Google. Click Continue. You do have to allow pop-ups. It pops up all sorts of things. So that's important for your kids as well. I found some of mine, when I used this in Quad 1, they had trouble if they had pop-ups blocked. It will default to out of 100. I'm going to make it out of 10. And again, I'm going to pop in my title. Oop. And my instructions. Give it a due date. And here the rubric is a Google rubric. Notice everything that's going on in this pop-up. Notice even the font. That's not a Brightspace font. That's Google. We are in Google territory, right? So this, if I was doing more of an assessment of learning, well, sometimes assessment for learning if it's something more complicated, but because this is a chart that they're doing and then they're doing a ranking and rationale, that's something I'm working with in my live lesson, and I don't think I'd include a rubric on something like this, but just to show it to you, you have the option to either create a rubric, reuse a previous one, or import one from Sheets. And this is identical to Google Assignments in Google Classroom. So if you're creating one from scratch, it's nice and simple. You can add different levels going this way, and you can add additional criteria going horizontally, exactly the same as building a rubric when we do them in Brightspace. But this one is wedded here into this Google assignment field. You can choose to check for plagiarism, and I like to kind of build that in as we're moving along, so it's a skill that the students are using. But here in Google Assignments, it is limited. You only have 5 in any given course, so you kind of have to parcel those out. I've been using the one in Brightspace, and with Turnitin is a little more powerful. But anyway, that's another choice you can make. Here's the real kind of bread and butter of the matter, is attaching the file that students are going to be able to edit and submit. So when we go into the Insert Files field, recent's kind of handy. I've been using this recently, so I don't have to dig around to find it. If you need to, you can keyword search or you can navigate around in your drive to find it. I find it's easiest to make sure you've just used it and had it open, and then it's easy to pop in. And notice this is exactly the same as in Google Classroom. That statement, each student will get a copy. At this point, I pause, go get a coffee, go think about something, and go over here and double check. The first time I handed out this chart, I had, like, I don't know how to pronounce this correctly, Tenochtitlan on like 2 times, and I didn't have Venice. And kids are like, Miss, this doesn't match the content. And once it's a template and multiplied for the students, you can't fix it. They can. But anyway, just to make sure it's nice and clean, that's your moment to give it a pause, to edit things before it's multiplied for the students. And then go ahead and click Create. Now I've got one that's pre-made, just kind of like on a cooking show. I'm just going to cancel out of this so it won't make a duplicate on me. And let's take a look at then, am I sure I want to discard? Yes, I am. Let's take a look at one that has student work submitted to it. So now when we go in and we look at the piece, it's a little bit frustrating. So you have to decide if, this is kind of worth you adapting the way you work. So even though 2 of my students have submitted things and 1 thing is marked, that integration, that information stays inside of Google. It doesn't surface here in Brightspace assignments. So this leaves this column kind of mute. So you just be aware of that. If you're used to seeing the numbers pop up here and click to grade, just know that you have to go down another couple of layers. And to find the submissions that the students have made in Google, it's not here. We have to go into Edit Assignment. That's the only little quirk in Google Assignments when it's in the assignment tool in Brightspace. And so voila, here we see the panel that shows the Google assignments, but this is kind of tiny and sort of awkward. I love this little pop-out window. So clicking on this icon, the square with the arrow, pops it out into a new tab and kind of stretch and breathe fully and see all of your students. So you can see one student, I had put some comments on it and then he resubmitted it. This student's, it's marked. These students, they've been assigned, but the students haven't completed them yet. So let's take a look. This is really where we get in familiar territory. When you click on a piece of student work, now we're in our very familiar, if you're a Google Classroom user, here is our marking window. This looks exactly the way we've marked all of our Google assignments. So by default, it comes up using suggesting mode. If you want to, you can toggle out of that to editing. I find suggesting mode really puts the student in the driver's seat. So I can make a suggestion here, and on the student's end, Mafusa will see that suggestion and she can choose. She can say, no, actually, I like what I've done, or she can tick and that suggestion sticks. I can go into directly edit as well. And I can also add comments and suggestions. I can go and I can insert comments. There's shortcuts for this as well. And I can provide information and have a conversation around the document. If she's thinking, I don't know why this is what, you can add a comment, provide some help. And it feels like you're working with the student through the process. Another piece that's really lovely inside of Google Assignments, of course, is the comment bank. So when we work with large groups of students, often things come up kind of over and over again. So you can copy that comment to the clipboard, and then when you go and you insert the comment, oops. You just paste that in and it's good to go, and it turns into a link automatically. It just really fast elements in the workflow. And speaking of flow, you just toggle through going to different students. And because it's Google, you don't have to hit save anywhere. It's remembering and saving as we go. Now notice here, as I'm trying to mark, I can't. And that's because these students, it's still assigned to them and they have not submitted it. We can only give a numeric mark to submitted work. I'm just going to go back to Jason's just for a moment. So he had resubmitted. So now I can take a look, and if I think this is a massive improvement, I can go in here and I can change the mark, and I can do some feedback here, and I can, in essence, re-return it. So students, until the due date, can resubmit work based on the comments that you've made, or based on if they've shared the document with a peer for peer editing. They can keep doing that. Now we've got time. Let's take a quick look from a student point of view. How relatively easy it is for them to go in and find. Let's go and be Mafusa just for a moment and see the work that's assigned to her. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention here in the pop-out, as you're marking a set of work, as you're providing your feedback and assessment, I find it handy to take this unique URL for the Google assignment and I just drag it down to my bar. So I don't even have to go directly into the right place in Brightspace to access it. I can just come in here to do my marking, because it's a funny kind of little counterintuitive integration that I have to go into assignment and edit the assignment. I do a little brain freeze sometimes going, now where do I get them again? So I can just access it immediately from here. I'm just going to go be a student for just a tick. Are we doing okay for questions, Aaron, in the chat there?
We are. I'm just enthusing about Comment Bank.
Oh, yeah.
The other thing I just noticed, the way that you just expressed that, you can bring that HTML, you can bring that link down into your bookmark and access it directly. Mm-hmm. Really, all we're doing is embedding a Google assignment in Brightspace assignments. And we're in, because if you can access it outside, it's not like it's stored in Brightspace. We're just linking out to Google, aren't we?
Yeah, they talk about the handshake at the
Okay.
moment of sign in, that there's a degree of relationship. I think I could still access it if I wasn't logged into Brightspace. I have to be into TDSB Google.
TDSB self.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't be Andrea private, but yeah, it's that initial relationship. So in this particular student, she has already begun working on a Google assignment. The very first time the students do that connection between their Google account and Brightspace, a screen will come up saying, do you wish to link? And they just have to say yes, but that's a one-time affair. So she can go back to this organizer here in Brightspace and she can take a look. Now I have to pretend to be a student just for a moment. You won't have this kind of layer of complication. They'll just be doing their own thing.
So when Andrea becomes a student, just for the chat, she'll start using words like sick and lit, and they are both good things. So I don't want anyone to think that she is in fact ill. All right.
Oh dear. So now I'm a student Mafusa, and I can see the helpful comments that my teacher has left on my Google Doc. And she can read them, she can respond to them. She knows that's a new one. Yep. Aware of this. Yep. I find some kids are so conscientious once I've read the thing to let me know. They'll go tick, tick, tick. Others just ignore it, but whatever. It's up to each child. So she wants to follow that bit of advice, then automatically that's sorted and she can go and take a look. So when she's all done here, sometimes kids will think they have to kind of double share. This is already shared with me. So without me having to do it, often my workaround before I discovered this integration had been asking kids to provide a link to a document that they'd shared with me. And invariably they give me the link and they didn't share with me. And you hit that link and it says, you do not have access. And is there anything more annoying? Well, anyway, but this is an automatic share. So you'll see I'm listed here. And also if I'm co-teaching, if I have a student teacher, anybody else who's a teacher in this course would be able to, in Brightspace, would be able to edit as well. So that just takes away just that little piece of annoyance. But there is no submit button in the actual document. So say Mafusa's, we've been having this conversation, she's been working away at everything, and now she's done. She's going to hit submit. Brilliant. So now it changes from a status of assigned to a status of submitted. And Google always wants feedback. So needy. No thanks, Google. So let's now go back to being a teacher again. I'm going to stop impersonating. And then I also have to stop impersonating in Google. So I'm going to go to the assignment. This doesn't integrate into Quick Eval. If Quick Eval is your favorite thing, then you'll have to think about kind of judiciously when and where you'd want to use Google assignments. I'm going to go back to edit the assignment, and I'm still Mafusa. So I just have to switch, and I'll be with you. Here's another pop-up. So again, what's lovely here, as I pop out and take a look at the student's work, I get that status. I see what's up. I see this little green Mafusa's has submitted. It needs my attention. And when I go in and do that submit, take a look, add my overall feedback, and provide a mark, because of the integration, once I hit return, it's very much like in a Google assignment hitting publish. When I return, I can go back into, I think I had it already open over here. I can go into my grades tool, and without doing any data entry, there are the grades for this particular item. So you can see that 9 has just appeared there. I don't have to push it. I've set mine up to continuously upgrade. So they see as soon as I've published that mark, and you can see Jason's updated mark is corrected and pushed. I use this little short form, or ELT, that it's an external learning tool. It means something to me, not to the kids, and this is just the short form. In managed grades, when they look at their grade report, I think, let's take a look at Jason's. When they look at their grade report, they see the full correct name. Yeah, the Seven Cities Organizer, and that's what his grade is. So you'll notice there is an association. Those marks don't push without an association. And it's, even though it's nested inside of Google Assignments, it's referred to as an external learning tool. And it is a very specific type of association. And if I decide to delete this assignment, not only do I have to delete it over in assignments, in order to remove the grade item, I have to go to course admin, and then I have to go to external learning tools, and I'll see the name of it, and I can delete it from there if I want to get rid of it, but it's all good. Okay, how are we doing for time? Do I have?
We are just at 10 after. Can we show content really quickly?
Yeah, let's do that. It's pretty
selfishly,
sweet.
That's my favorite place to use these Google assignments. So the rest of the process is going to be the same, right?
It's
the rest of the flow is the exact
identical.
same.
Yeah.
But we're just housing it in a different place. And Andrea will take us through how we would put it into content so that it's not inside an assignment. It's a Google assignment that we're using in the main space of our classroom.
Oh, I forgot to delete it from yesterday. Just one sec.
And here's the one that she baked yesterday. It's now been sitting out overnight. I would not eat this one.
It is cooled. There we go.
A fresh souffle.
So something like a KWL that you'd use at the beginning of an activity. It's very metacognitive. They're thinking about their thinking. I wouldn't assign a grade to that. And you also don't want kids saying, well, they will. Is this for marks? Is this for marks? And if you put an assignment, yeah, it's for marks. But if it's here in the content, it's an activity. It's like the sketch thing we did. It's like the Kahoots we did. It's part of that learning process. So I love putting it here. And all you have to do is click Add Existing. And then it's not one of these many choices. You have to go to More. And again, remember Google Assignments. Confirming who you are. And then I'm going to just give this one. It's a binary. Did you do it? Okay, you did it. Awesome, you. And give it a little while to go. And so I'm just going to pop a little KWL chart over here. And again, I find linking it in just helps them know what it's referring to. And oops, continue. Let's see. We've got everything's popping up all over the place. Give it a little title. And some instructions. There we go, and attach it. So again, if we've had it open recently, it's going to be somewhere here near the top. Each student will get a copy and create. So when it's sitting here in content, it can feel a little buried. So everything is, about linking and communicating with kids and making it easy for them so they don't have to go kind of digging around in the bowels of the course. And by default, any new piece will come to the bottom. And because this is a KWL, I want to drag that up to the top because they're thinking about things even before we really start the activity. And it's really quite a nice large panel here. I find the layout is much nicer than in assignments. They know it's not 4 marks. It's just, did you do it or not? And here, with these ellipses, with the snowman, the vertical ellipses, we can manage accounts. Sometimes if students link more than one Google account, you'll have to delete one so that there can be a bit of management there sometimes. But if you go above that, now this is peanut butter. down here, and this is chocolate around the outside. If you go here to these horizontal ellipses, we've got a lovely post to course homepage, and that sets up, here we are popping up again, a little message. And a direct link. So they don't have to find, I've got lots of stuff going on here in the content, lots of different activities and things. So when we go out to our course homepage, they have a link. They also get a notification. So nice and fully integrated, and so they can learn that this type of activity, it's not an assessment of learning where they're receiving a grade, it's assessment for learning that'll give them feedback that'll help them learn. And there's also with the L part an assessment as learning, because they're thinking about how they think and what they picked up from the lesson when they circle back after the lesson's over. I even love, this is a Brightspace piece, good going Brightspace. I love this little paper airplane icon that indicates that it's not just sitting here in our content, our table of contents, that it's been posted out to our course homepage and students are ready to work with it and use it. So I think that's a pretty sweet and complete integration that lets them know as students submit the work. We'll see it listed here, just as in the previous example that I showed you in assignment. The integration panel works identically in both of them. As students submit the work, when we click, it will have a unique identifier. Here's our pop-out. And for this one, if I drag it onto my bar, you can see it has a different name. It's Unit 1, Activity 1. And I can use that for having that conversation with each student, providing feedback and knowing how they're doing as we're moving through the material. One little cautionary note, I've got towards the end of the note document, if anybody joined us midway, have we put our link into I'll pop that into the chat again. We've got a couple little cautionary notes just to be aware of. Oh yes, when we go out to our Google Drive, really important that for us and for our students, that we let Google do what it wants to do. So the very first time I used Google Assignments in Brightspace, Google created this folder called Assignments on the 5th of October 2020 for me. I gave it the color and the star just because I wanted to know where the heck it was. But if you rename it or drag it somewhere else, it causes complications. I know because I did it. I wanted it tucked inside of my course, and that just got things all snaggled up. And also these folders that Google created, I didn't type them. I didn't create these folders. These are auto-generated by the integration. And you'll notice it even uses the same like funky punctuation. It's identical to the name that you give the course in Brightspace. It just grabs that label. And then inside of it, just like in Google Classroom, it creates the templates, do not edit. It's the only time Google's ever all caps shouted at me. I felt a bit sensitive about it at first, but then I realized it wasn't just me. And each of the different Google activities, whether I create it in assignments or content, it is not differentiated here. It just provides the folder, and here are my docs for my students, and I just created that, and I can tell that Jason hasn't started yet, but if I have some notes for him, if I've been talking to him in our live lesson and there's something I wanted to mention, hey, don't forget that you mentioned you wanted to know about this, you can pop it in and have a chat. So that's really the strength of having those Google Docs. We're not relying on students to share them one at a time down in Shared with Me, and then collecting them from Shared with Me and creating a folder to put them in and managing them. That management piece is completely taken care of by the integration. Another thing I wanted to mention about the integration is, for those of you who use Brightspace grades, just be on the lookout. It's lovely, it means well, but it messes up my notes. Erin knows that I go a little bonkers about the passive-aggressive notes that Brightspace grades leaves you. I always want mine at 100, and I freak a bit when it's not at 100. So having a look here, even though my KWL, I had no intention of that being weighted, no intention of marking that, Brightspace doesn't know it. And here's our external learning tool. It creates this grade item. I don't want to delete it. If I wanted to get rid of it, I'd have to go and then delete the learning tool, which would kill the Google assignment. So my little workaround is to go and edit it. And I'm just going to give it a weight of 0. It's not going into the mark. It gives us the visibility to know whether a student's done it or not, which is kind of nice when you're looking at all of the learning that takes place in the course, and kind of says, do we only value what we mark? No, we also value what we do. And when you're having conversations with parents and guardians about where there are some gaps, maybe if students aren't completing the process work, that could be part of the puzzle. It also doesn't give it a category, so I like everything in numeric order. Can you tell I was a librarian at one point? I'm going to reorder that. I'm going to put it back up where it belongs. I'm going to, that's just reordering it. I also have to give it a category because it's sitting here rogue. We call it rogue because notice how it's all the way out at the margin and it should be tucked in. I'm going to bulk edit for that and pop it into the correct category.
And if that's sitting rogue at a 0 weight, it's not
it doesn't
going to influence
matter.
your mark.
Yeah.
But you'll notice that when it first dropped in there, it was the default 110. Weight of 10.
Yeah.
Now that's 10 out of 110. That's 9% of the overall score.
Yeah, for one little itty bitty thing.
One check mark smiley face assignment.
Nope.
So that would really skew it. And when we're talking about these grades integrations, there were a couple of questions.
Oh, okay.
One of them, Natasha had an issue when she first used this, that 2 grade items were being generated. One that was the assignment grade item and one that was the Google assignment external learning tool grade item. And I think what happened there was you set it up in assignments. And in assignments, you set up a grade item, and wanting to help, Brightspace wanted to help.
Yes.
It creates a grade item for you in there as the chocolate. But then when you set up that peanut butter,
there's
that Google assignments, it adds another one. So we don't want to have a grade item set up in our Brightspace assignments, do we?
Correct. So I had that exact same thing happen. And so here I'd go back to edit assignment, and I'd have to undo the hook.
Right.
So see how it says not in grades? If it said blah, blah, blah in grades, I'd go and my choice would be remove from grades. I'd remove it from grades. And
Andrew, do you need to put a 10 points in the out of score?
Maybe if I left it at 0.
If you leave that blank and then the 10 points is decided by your Google assignment, that's the thing that I was wondering. Let's see what happens there. Because if we leave that blank, then it is kind of
asking it to. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, that's it. Yeah, it's asking for trouble when we put that mark in there because it wants to help. It wants to set up a grade item for you.
Yes.
So I'm curious what happened to our fellow here.
Well, this particular one, the 7 cities organizer, this is the one that is in assignments.
Right.
And I do want it to have 10 points. And it does come in at 10 points.
What creates the 10 points? Is it the 10 points that you entered the out of score in Google assignments, or is it 10 points that you enter the out of score in Brightspace assignments?
I believe so. When it comes into enter grades, and I had the 2 of them sitting side by side. I had this one, ELT, and I had the other one, I called it ASS for assignment for Brightspace.
Sure.
And they were sitting there side by side, and I did the marking and watched the marks flow in. The Brightspace one is a dummy. It's mute, even though it said 10 points and was sitting there, and I safely deleted it, and it didn't do anything to the integration.
Okay.
And it didn't do anything to the marks either. So in the actual, I was just following the instructions when you create a new assignment and you maybe I love
that we're testing this out right now because
I went too quickly. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't put anything in score out of. Let's just, exactly right. Let's just see what happens if we throw one of these guys in here now. And that way it would save us the trouble of deleting that grade item afterwards if it will let us do it.
But it warns you that they have to match.
It does, hey?
Yeah.
Make sure the total points and due dates match what's in the LMS. Let's see what happens if they don't.
So
Let's see if we can break the system.
You make it, blow it up, and we'll blame Aaron.
I'm on record here. Let's see what happens. I'm just going through the questions. There were some general rubric questions. And Christiane, I know you don't have an afternoon class, do you, Christiane? We can show you how to get to that old experience again afterwards. Let's just see what happens here, and then we'll throw it to the group to see if anyone's got a good space where they're grabbing sample rubrics.
So we're leaving it ungraded.
We're leaving it ungraded.
I like the logic of that it won't create. But even if you do leave it 10, you can say remove from grades.
Yes.
You can put 10 in there and say no thank you, grades. That was my previous workaround. I wonder if it'll push the marks.
Oh yeah. Lots to tinker with. I think
I'm just a rule follower. You know that. And when it said they had to match, I'm like, okay, they have to match.
If we do it, and Natasha's saying that they will both pop up, but just delete one after marking. Yeah, basically that's the way to do it. You
delete the Brightspace one, the one that says assignments. You have to leave the one that says external learning tool. Yeah, I agree. And I went through those steps before. I had to remove the hook by saying remove from grades and assignments, and then I could go into more actions, delete, and because the hook was gone, it was deletable. Did this create and then you always look at the bottom to see if it's created, if it's chucked in anymore.
Yet another reason to put this in content.
Yes.
I really think that is the nicest place to keep this slightly separate tool so that the students aren't confused, so the grades is not confused, and that they get that fully linkable experience where we can redirect them through activity feed, or if we wanted to drop a link into announcements, we could do that. And it's just a nicer, bigger screen.
But even though this one was a content piece, remember, but we had to,
But it creates one, it will only create one, it won't create two.
Correct. It does not create two. Yep. And some of them, when I made them in assignments, it just created one when I said no grade item. When I made sure before I hit save that it wasn't creating a grade item, even though I'd given it a point value. Yeah, and it automatically wanted to create a grade item when I gave it a point value. Oh, goodness. We know what we're talking about if we've done it a few times. I'm sorry, folks who haven't tried it before. They're like, what?
But it's a super tool to play around with. And really, you can use it where you need it. You can see the use for it, especially if we're working with any students, but especially if you're working with students who may be IEP'd, or special ed, or if you're doing resource and you want to be there for the process of their work instead of just looking at the product of their work. Andrea called it a conversation, and that's exactly what it is. You're having a conversation as they're creating. And I'll be playing around with this in Quad 4 as well. I was against it when it first came out. I said, this is not working. It's rushed and it's jammed in. But now seeing how cleanly it ties in, if we set it up properly, I'll definitely be tinkering with this in Quad 4.